Hello there, this is Christy Lewis with Christy Lewis Reviews Books Worth Your Time, and today I have 2 wrap-ups and then a few other books in addition. I read the most books in October for the Boo to You Readathon, which was put on by Bookish Princess, and that was so much fun. This was the best readathon ever. The prompts were really fun. You had to read books based on the Disney parks. I read Scythe and Thunderhead for Tomorrowland. And if you want to hear more about Scythe and Thunderhead, I did a dedicated review video that's meant to kind of prepare you for the toll with some discussion. The toll is already out and I'm so excited to read it. I gave Scythe 4 stars and I gave Thunderhead 5 stars. So I really enjoyed them and I hope you'll check out the review video. I read We Have Always Lived in the Castle for the Haunted Mansion, and that was really very atmospheric. I really enjoyed it. It's our 2 sisters living in a house and you're kind of wondering the whole time why they're there, and there's this mystery why does the town hate them, and it ended up not being as terrible as I was expecting, but it was there's definitely some darkness there and it was pretty interesting. So if you want to learn more about that, in my Dewey's Readathon vlog, and I will link that Dewey's Readathon vlog as well, probably below. The Prince and the Pauper by Samuel L. Clemens for Fantasyland. And I read about half of Midnight's Children by Salman Rushdie for Adventureland. I just couldn't finish that one, it was too big for me. And I was hoping to read Death of the Archbishop by Willa Cather for Frontierland, but unfortunately I just didn't have time with Midnight's Children. And because I ended up reading Thunderhead, I wasn't sure at the beginning of the month if I would continue with Thunderhead, but I enjoyed it so much! The rest of the books that I read, I am going to be reviewing for you right here, and I'm going to insert the footage now. I am now over halfway through Midnight's Children by Salman Rushdie and really enjoying it. It's funny in a very physical way, kind of like Diana Gabaldon. He does a lot of physical humor, only he uses a lot more metaphors than Diana Gabaldon does. She'll just state right out what the body part is, and he's like, pickles and pencils. There's also a lot of rambles, and it was really hard for me to get through the first half, and stay focused. The history is definitely a little over my head. I did not even get to start The Prince and the Pauper by Samuel L. Clemens, Mark Twain. It was perfect for Fantasyland. How cute was this? So we're following a boy named Tom Canty who lives in a place called Offal Court near Cheapside in England, and this is during the reign of Henry VIII. His son, the Prince of Wales, Edward, I believe it was Edward IV. Tom wishes that he was a prince. He just would love a little taste of that prince lifestyle because his life basically sucks. His dad beats him and beats his mother and his sisters. Tom tries to take the beatings for them, but it's kind of tough. But he has his own little court of his friends and they all try and do the escapism thing because their lives suck. And then one day, Prince Edward takes pity on poor young Tom. They exchange their clothing on a whim and they end up looking quite a bit alike, and it's quite startling. And a mix-up ensues. Identities are mistaken. The Prince of England is thrown out on his ear and has to wander all through these crazy situations in England. It's quite fun to watch him kind of realize what his people really live like, because he has no idea. And it's fun to watch Tom's growth as prince as well. They each have their own journeys to go through. The plot is a little bit long-winded for me, it just went on a little longer than I would have liked, but I still think it's great for children and maybe teens as well. The vocabulary is not too hard, although some kind of disturbing things do happen because Mark Twain shows the kind of punishments that you would get for trifling larceny, I think it was called. There's some disturbing scenes in this, but nothing that today's teens can't handle, and I think most children could handle it too, because I think it's good for children to know what was going on in history. And it is inscribed to children of all ages, so I think you could read this and be pretty safe as a kid. One of my favorite things about this book was all the descriptions of the land and the clothes. The royal barge, attended by its gorgeous fleet, took its stately way down the Thames through the wilderness of illuminated boats. Wilderness of illuminated boats, I just love that. The air was laden with music. The riverbanks were beruffled with joy flames. This distant city lay in a soft, luminous glow from its countless invisible bonfires. Above it rose many a slender spire into the sky, encrusted with sparkling lights, wherefore in their remoteness they seemed like jeweled lances thrust aloft. As the fleet swept along, it was greeted from the banks with a continuous hoarse roar of cheers and the ceaseless flash and boom of artillery. wow. And Tom's there on his silken pillows, just enjoying the ride, while his princess friends are like, yawn. Presently entered a baron and an earl apparelled after the Turkish fashion, in long robes of bodkin powdered with gold, hats on their heads of crimson velvet, and with rolls of gold girded with 2 swords, called scimitars, hanging by great baldricks of gold. I enjoyed this one similarly to how I enjoyed Pinocchio. I bought these like side by side in the same sale, and I did enjoy them. They were quite fun. This one is a tale handed down to Mark Twain from his father, from his father, from his father, back and back and back. He's like, this is something that could have happened. It's a legend. It could be history, which makes it kind of fun. And finally, I have a few thoughts on Victober. Victober was the month of October. Everybody was reading Victorian books. I read 2 books for Victober. I picked up A Tale of Two Cities by Charles Dickens because I had just gotten a copy from Barnes & Noble, and I was also doing another video where I ended up picking that by chance, and I will link that video here as well because that's where I really talk about A Tale of Two Cities. But needless to say, it was very emotional and I did enjoy it quite a bit. So far it's my favorite Dickens. I've read this, I think, is my 4th Dickens, and this one's my favorite so far. It's about England and France during the French Revolution, and it culminates in the Reign of Terror, and you're following 2 men who fall in love with the same woman. And the other book that I read for Victober was Kidnapped by Robert Louis Stevenson, and I'm going to insert that review footage here. When I started my Victober read of A Tale of Two Cities, I didn't actually realize that Robert Louis Stevenson was also a Victorian author until I saw Kate Howe's video on, I forget which video it was, but she listed a bunch of like famous authors that she was like, I can't believe I haven't read these, you know, and Robert Louis Stevenson had a couple on there. So one of the ones she mentioned, Kidnapped by Robert Louis Stevenson. Kate was not super excited to try and read this one, and I believe that she didn't end up reading it. That was because she was afraid it would be too plot-based, and she likes characters, and I agree. I thought this was a little bit plot-based. I have enjoyed some Robert Louis Stevenson before. I really enjoyed his Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde. I have a review of that on my blog if you'd like to see it. I remember loving Treasure Island when I was a kid, so I'd like to reread Treasure Island sometime. But Kidnapped, not a fan. I only got about 95 pages in, I believe. There were a few interesting things about it, like the period was interesting. Although the book was written in 1886, it was set in 1751, which is during the Bonnie Prince Charlie rebellion that we're all familiar with from Outlander, which I also enjoyed. That was the one thing of interest to me in this book. I thought it was interesting to hear another book's perspective, this being a historical novel written closer to that time period than Outlander was. It follows the narrator David, who is left on his own, orphaned, and trying to get in contact with, I think it's his uncle or somebody else in his family, an older man who turns out to be not such a nice guy, and David ends up on the seas on a sort of pirate ship, and it's not a good place to be, and that's kind of where I stopped reading. It's like, I think, kind of like an adventure on the high seas type thing. I just really wasn't enjoying it, and it wasn't keeping my attention. It didn't work for me. I hope somebody else will find it appealing. That's all I have for you guys. Thank you so much for watching. I hope you enjoyed these reviews. If you have read any of these, please let me know in the comments. I just love to talk to you guys. And you read such interesting things. If you liked this video, please give it a thumbs up and consider commenting and subscribing. There's a little bell icon to the bottom right of your computer screen that you can hit if you want to get notifications every time I post a video. I'll talk to you guys soon. Bye!